The greatest barrier that stands between you and the life you want isn't the economy, your background, or even the opinions of others. It's the voice in your own head. That quiet, persistent whisper that says you're not ready, not qualified, or not enough. It's subtle, almost convincing, because it sounds like you. But it isn't truth. It's conditioning. It's the result of every moment in your past when you felt small, doubted yourself, or were told to stay in your lane. That voice becomes the default setting of your mind, replaying old fears on a loop, convincing you that safety equals success. But safety is not success. It's stagnation disguised as comfort. Most people never break free from that voice because they mistake it for reality. They think the limits they perceive are fixed, when in truth they're flexible. The walls that hold you back are built from beliefs, and beliefs can be rebuilt. Once you begin to question the stories you tell yourself, you start to see how many of them were never truly yours. They were handed down by parents, teachers, friends, and even society. They were the world's way of keeping you realistic. But what they really did was make you doubt your own potential. Self-doubt thrives in the shadows of uncertainty. It grows stronger when you focus on what you can't control instead of what you can. It feeds on comparison, on the illusion that everyone else is more capable, more confident, more prepared. But every person you admire has battled the same voice inside their head. The difference is they chose not to obey it. They took action in spite of fear, not in the absence of it. They understood that courage is not the absence of doubt. It's the refusal to let doubt make the decisions. When you believe the voice of fear, you shrink. You play smaller. You avoid opportunities that could change your life because you don't feel worthy of them yet. But worthiness is not something you earn. It's something you recognize. The belief that you have to be ready before you begin is one of the biggest lies you'll ever believe. You get ready by starting. You build confidence by moving, not waiting. Every step forward is a vote for the person you're becoming, not the one you used to be. The moment you challenge your own thoughts, you start to reclaim your power. You begin to notice the gap between what your mind says and what reality actually is. You realize that your brain isn't trying to hurt you. It's trying to protect you. It wants to keep you safe from pain, failure, and rejection. But in doing so, it also protects you from growth, success, and transformation. Reprogramming your mind means teaching it a new truth that discomfort is not danger and fear is not a stop sign. It's a signal that something meaningful is on the other side. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It takes awareness. You have to become an observer of your own thoughts, catching them in the act. When that old pattern of self-doubt appears, pause and question it. Ask, is this fact or feeling? Most of the time, it's just a story you've told yourself so often it feels true. But you are the author of that story, and you can rewrite it at any time. Your mind believes whatever you repeat to it. Feed it words of belief, and it will grow stronger in belief. Feed it words of fear, and fear will dominate. You have the power to change the dialogue. Every time you replace, I can't, with I'm learning to, you shift your identity. Every time you say, I don't know if I can handle this, and follow it with, but I'm willing to try, you rewire your brain for courage. The mind learns through repetition and experience. The more you prove to yourself that you can survive discomfort, the more your confidence expands. And when confidence expands, self-doubt loses its grip. The world outside you responds to the world inside you. When you think small, opportunities shrink to fit your mindset. When you think bold, the world begins to open up. You attract what you believe you're capable of receiving. That's not some mystical concept. It's psychology. Your thoughts guide your attention, and your attention shapes your behavior. If you constantly expect failure, you subconsciously act in ways that create it. But when you expect growth, your mind searches for ways to make it real. It's important to understand that breaking free from self-doubt doesn't mean you'll never feel it again. It means you'll recognize it for what it is, a mental echo, not a command. It's background noise, not your identity. You can acknowledge it without obeying it. You can feel it and still move forward. That is where true power begins, not in perfection, but in persistence. When you stop letting your doubts define you, you open space for possibility. You stop asking, what if I fail? And start asking, what if I grow? You stop seeing obstacles as signs to quit and start seeing them as chances to evolve. That shift from fear to growth, from doubt to belief, is where transformation lies. And once you've experienced even a glimpse of that freedom, you'll never want to go back to the old limits your mind once believed were real. Your mind is the most powerful operating system you will ever own, yet most people go through life using it on outdated software. From the moment you were born, it began collecting data, experiences, opinions, fears, lessons, and storing them deep within you. Over time, that data formed your beliefs, and those beliefs became your reality. If you grew up hearing that success is only for certain people, or that taking risks leads to pain, your brain coded that as truth. And because the mind loves efficiency, it repeats those same patterns without questioning whether they still serve you. You end up living the same emotional script year after year, not because you lack potential, but because your mental system hasn't been updated. When your computer starts running slowly, you don't panic. You install an update. You trust that the update will make it faster, safer, more efficient. But when your thoughts slow you down, when fear and self-doubt freeze you in place, you rarely think of upgrading the system that created them. You assume that the way you think is just the way you are. Yet thinking isn't identity, it's habit. Every thought you allow to repeat without question becomes a groove in your neural pathways, a track your brain follows automatically. The good news is, just like software, your mind can be rewritten. It can learn new commands, develop new responses, and replace outdated code with empowering beliefs. Most people, however, never question their programming. They accept it as reality because it feels familiar. Familiarity is the mind's comfort zone. It's the illusion of safety. The problem is that the comfort zone doesn't care about your dreams. It only cares about predictability. That's why people stay stuck in jobs they hate, relationships that drain them, or routines that kill their creativity. Their internal software whispers, "At least you know this. Don't risk what you have for what you might lose." But that logic is flawed. When you avoid growth to preserve comfort, you're trading your potential for security, your passion for predictability. Reprogramming your mind begins with awareness. You must first notice the automatic responses that run your life. The moments when you say, "I can't," "I'm not ready," or "that's just not me." Those statements aren't facts. They're lines of code written by your past experiences. Every time you catch one, you have an opportunity to change it. Instead of, "I can't," try, "I'm learning how." Instead of, "I'm not ready," say, "I'm preparing myself." Small changes in language create seismic shifts in mindset. Words are commands to the subconscious, and when you change the command, you change the result. There's a reason so many people talk about the power of mindset. It determines the limits of what you can see. The mind filters reality through belief. If your programming says, "I'm not good with people," you'll unconsciously avoid connection. If your programming says, "I always fail," you'll overlook every success. Your brain isn't trying to deceive you, it's trying to prove itself right. It wants consistency between belief and experience. The moment you start feeding it new beliefs, ones that expand instead of restrict, you begin to break that loop. You stop living by the past and start designing from possibility. This process takes courage because your old programming will resist change. Your brain equates uncertainty with danger, even when that uncertainty leads to freedom. It will whisper reasons to stop, to slow down, to wait until everything feels certain. But nothing ever feels certain before it's achieved. Growth is inherently uncomfortable, and that discomfort is not a sign of failure. It's proof of evolution. Every time you face it instead of running, your system rewires itself for resilience. You become stronger, more adaptable, more capable of thriving in the unknown. Think about how often you let outdated thoughts dictate your decisions. You may hesitate to apply for a new role because you remember failing once before. You may avoid starting a project because you think you're not creative enough. You may stay quiet in a room full of people because somewhere along the way you were told your voice didn't matter. These are not truths. They're old files taking up space in your system. Deleting them doesn't happen overnight, but each act of courage, each step beyond fear, is like clearing corrupted data. The more you do it, the smoother your internal operating system runs. The fascinating thing about reprogramming your mind is that it doesn't require changing who you are. It requires remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. When you strip away the layers of fear, doubt, and conditioning, what remains is pure potential. You've always had the capacity to create. to lead, to build, to love, to inspire. The difference now is awareness. You see that the obstacles that once felt immovable were never external. They were mental scripts playing on repeat. And scripts can be rewritten with intention, repetition, and courage. Updating your mental software also means surrounding yourself with new input. You cannot install new beliefs while consuming the same information that built the old ones. Pay attention to what you read, watch, and listen to. Every conversation, every piece of content, every environment you enter reinforces your programming. Choose input that expands your thinking, challenges your assumptions, and nourishes your potential. Growth doesn't happen by accident, it happens by design. The mind learns from what it's fed, and your daily choices are the diet of your belief system. When you begin to run your life on an updated mindset, everything shifts. You start moving from reaction to creation. You stop waiting for permission to act and begin building momentum from within. Fear still appears, but it no longer drives the car. It rides in the passenger seat. Doubt still whispers, but its voice grows quieter, and the part of you that once hesitated begins to trust itself again. This is the power of reprogramming your mind, not to erase your past, but to rewrite your future with awareness, intention, and strength. Self-doubt is not born from a lack of ability, it is born from a lack of clarity. It creeps in when the path ahead is uncertain and when you can't quite see where your efforts will lead. It's in those moments when the mind begins to question everything. Am I capable enough? Am I smart enough? What if I'm wrong? The truth is, the problem isn't your capability. It's your connection to your purpose. When you lose sight of why you started, your focus shifts from contribution to comparison, and that's where fear grows. The human mind needs a clear reason to move forward. Without it, it defaults to hesitation. When your why is unclear, self-doubt fills the gap. It builds stories around uncertainty, convincing you that standing still is safer than moving. It turns questions into excuses and dreams into burdens. Clarity, on the other hand, acts as a compass. It doesn't eliminate fear, but it gives it direction. When you know why something matters deeply to you, your mind begins to align its thoughts, emotions, and energy toward making it real. Doubt doesn't disappear, but it loses authority. It becomes background noise instead of a barrier. Think about moments in your life when you felt unstoppable. It wasn't because you had all the answers. It was because you had a reason strong enough to push through the unknown. Purpose transforms hesitation into determination. When you're connected to something meaningful, effort feels lighter, setbacks feel smaller, and progress becomes inevitable. You stop asking, "Can I do this?" and start asking, "How can I make this happen?" That simple shift in perspective dismantles the foundation of self-doubt because it replaces fear with focus. The human brain is wired for survival, not fulfillment. Its first instinct is to protect you from pain, failure, and embarrassment. That's why it constantly evaluates risk before action. But clarity reframes risk. It tells your mind, yes, this might be uncomfortable, but it's worth it. The moment your reason becomes stronger than your resistance, your brain starts working for you, not against you. It begins to filter out distractions, generate creative solutions, and recognize opportunities that align with your goal. Doubt thrives on confusion. Purpose thrives on conviction. Every great achievement in history was born from people who faced the same uncertainty you do now. They questioned themselves, they stumbled, they faced rejection, but they kept their eyes fixed on something bigger than their fear. They didn't eliminate doubt, they outgrew it. When you find clarity in your mission, your energy shifts from, "What if I fail?" to "This is too important not to try." That shift doesn't come from external validation, it comes from an inner knowing that your contribution matters. Clarity doesn't arrive overnight. It's built through reflection, through asking the hard questions about what truly drives you. What do you care about deeply enough to endure discomfort for? What outcome would make the struggle worthwhile? What legacy do you want to create, even if no one claps for you? When you can answer those questions honestly, your mind becomes anchored. You stop chasing approval and start pursuing alignment. You realize that self-doubt was never a signal to stop. It was a signal to dig deeper into your purpose. Once you find clarity, action becomes simpler. Not easier, but simpler. You start making decisions from conviction instead of fear. You stop overanalyzing every step because you understand the direction you're moving in. Each action becomes a vote for your future self, and those votes compound into confidence. Confidence isn't arrogance, it's evidence. It's built through consistent movement toward what you believe in. The clearer your why, the stronger your ability to act despite uncertainty. Without clarity, your energy fragments. You spend more time worrying about what others think than focusing on what you can control. You compare your progress to others and question your worth with every obstacle. But with clarity, your focus sharpens. You start to see the difference between distraction and direction. The opinions that once shook your confidence no longer hold weight because your sense of purpose has become your anchor. Doubt may still whisper, but it no longer dictates your pace. It's in the moments of confusion that your growth begins. When you choose to pause, to reflect, and to realign with your purpose, you begin to transform self-doubt into self-awareness. You start noticing how every challenge reveals what you truly value. You start understanding that fear isn't a sign that you're weak. It's a sign that you care deeply about the outcome. And that caring is your greatest strength. It means you're invested, you're human, and you're ready to evolve. When your purpose becomes clear, self-doubt doesn't vanish. It simply loses control. It becomes a whisper in a room filled with conviction. The mind, once clouded by uncertainty, begins to see a path where none seem to exist. And step by step, with each decision rooted in clarity, you move closer to the life that once felt just out of reach. You are not your thoughts, you are the programmer behind them. Every idea, every fear, every limitation that crosses your mind is simply a line of code written through experience. The problem is that most people forget they are the ones writing the code. They start believing the script their mind runs automatically. When a thought says, "You're not good enough," they accept it as fact rather than a function they can edit. But the truth is, thoughts are not commands, they're suggestions. You can observe them, challenge them, and decide which ones deserve to stay. The moment you remember that you are the author, not the audience, of your internal dialogue, you begin to take back control of your story. The mind learns through repetition. Every time you think a certain way, you reinforce a neural pathway. If you constantly tell yourself that you're unqualified, your brain will make that belief feel more real over time. It will collect evidence to support it, notice moments of failure, and overlook moments of success. That's how self-sabotage begins, not through lack of skill, but through unchallenged repetition. But the same rule works in your favor. When you start feeding your mind empowering thoughts, it builds new pathways. Over time, confidence becomes the new default, and fear loses its dominance. Awareness is the first step in rewriting your mental code. You must learn to separate your identity from your thoughts. Thoughts are temporary. They arise, they pass, and they change. But you are constant, the observer behind them. When you begin to notice your thoughts instead of reacting to them, you start to see patterns. You notice that fear shows up most when you're about to step outside your comfort zone. You notice that self-criticism appears most when you're growing. These realizations give you leverage. They allow you to respond consciously instead of automatically. Programming the mind is like training a muscle. You can't do it once and expect permanent strength. It takes consistency. Every morning you wake up, your brain reloads its usual patterns. If you want to change them, you must intentionally install new ones. That could mean writing affirmations, practicing gratitude, visualizing success, or simply replacing negative self-talk with neutral or positive language. The key is repetition with intention. Over time, those new thoughts become just as natural as the old ones once were. What felt forced in the beginning becomes automatic later. Most people underestimate how powerful their internal vocabulary is. The words you use when you talk to yourself are the foundation of your emotional state. Phrases like, "I can't," "I always fail," or "I'm not enough" act as mental commands that direct your brain's focus toward failure and inadequacy. The brain doesn't argue, it obeys. When you shift your language to statements like, "I'm improving," or "I'm learning," or "I'm figuring it out," you activate a different part of your mind, one that seeks solutions instead of problems. This subtle shift rewires how you approach challenges and transforms how you see yourself. It's important to understand that this process isn't about pretending everything is perfect. It's about choosing thoughts that serve you rather than sabotage you. You don't have to deny fear or doubt. You just have to stop giving them authority. You can acknowledge, "I feel afraid," and still act with courage. You can admit, "I don't have all the answers," and still move forward. The difference between those who succeed and those who don't isn't that the successful never doubt themselves. It's that they refuse to let doubt dictate their actions. They have learned to run their mental software instead of letting it run them. Your environment also plays a huge role in your programming. The people you spend time with, the content you consume, the conversations you engage in, all of these are inputs into your mental system. If you surround yourself with negativity, cynicism, and fear, your brain will mirror those frequencies. If you surround yourself with positivity, challenge, and inspiration, your brain will adapt to that energy instead. You cannot build a confident mindset in an environment that constantly reinforces your insecurities. Changing your surroundings is part of changing your system. As you start to take control of your mental code, you'll begin to notice resistance. The brain clings to the familiar, even if the familiar is painful. Old thoughts will try to pull you back to old patterns because they feel comfortable. You might catch yourself thinking, "This isn't working," or "I'll never change." That's the old code trying to defend itself. But the more you persist, the weaker that resistance becomes. The mind eventually adapts to the new instructions and starts running them without friction. It's also vital to remember that your thoughts are influenced by your state of being. A tired body breeds negative thoughts. A nourished, rested one supports optimism. That's why physical well-being is part of mental reprogramming. Exercise, nutrition, and rest aren't just body maintenance. They are mindset maintenance. When your energy is low, even small challenges feel impossible. When your energy is high, those same challenges become opportunities. You can't program a high-performance system with low energy input. Taking ownership of your thoughts is the most liberating act you can perform. You stop waiting for motivation and start creating it. You stop seeking permission and start granting it. You begin to see that your mind isn't your enemy. It's your greatest ally once trained properly. Every thought you choose intentionally becomes a line of new code. A better version of your inner system, rewriting the narrative that once held you back. Growth requires discomfort. It's one of the simplest truths and yet one of the hardest for people to accept. From the moment we are born, our instinct is to seek comfort, to feel safe, to avoid pain, to stay where things are predictable. But growth is never found in predictability. Every great transformation begins with uncertainty, with friction, with the kind of discomfort that forces you to stretch beyond who you were yesterday. The same way muscles grow by tearing and rebuilding stronger, your character, confidence, and purpose grow through the pressure of challenge. The discomfort you try to avoid is often the very environment designed to shape you into who you're meant to become. Comfort feels good in the moment, but it's a slow form of decay. When you stay too long in a comfortable space, your energy begins to dull, your drive begins to fade, and your creativity begins to wither. You stop taking risks, stop asking questions, stop pushing boundaries. You trade progress for stability and wonder why you feel restless. Comfort gives the illusion of peace, but beneath the surface, there's stagnation. It's the stillness before decline. The uncomfortable truth is that the price of safety is often potential. When you cling too tightly to what you know, you block yourself from discovering what you could be. Discomfort is not punishment, it's a signal. It tells you that you're growing, expanding, entering unfamiliar territory. It's the body and mind's natural reaction to evolution. When you begin something new, whether it's learning a skill, starting a business, or changing a habit, your mind resists. It protests because it's wired to protect you from the unknown. But the unknown is where possibility lies. Every new level of your life demands a new version of you, and that version cannot emerge in the same comfort zone that created the old one. The discomfort you feel is evidence that you're moving toward expansion, not away from it. Most people misinterpret discomfort as a sign to stop. They think, this feels hard, maybe it's not meant for me. But difficulty doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. It often means you're finally on the right one. The resistance you feel when you push beyond your limits is your old self fighting to stay alive. Growth threatens the identity you've built around familiarity. It requires you to let go of certainty and embrace a process you can't fully control. And yet, that surrender is what opens the door to transformation. You cannot create a new reality while holding on to the comfort of the old one. When you start to embrace discomfort as part of the process, it begins to lose its power over you. You start seeing challenges as teachers instead of threats, Every failure becomes feedback. Every setback becomes a test of resilience. You begin to realize that pain and progress are two sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other. The people who grow the most are not those who avoid discomfort, but those who learn to navigate it with courage. They understand that temporary pain is a small price for permanent strength. Discomfort also exposes truth. It reveals who you are when things don't go your way. It strips away pretense, showing you what you really believe about yourself. When everything is easy, you can pretend you're confident, disciplined, or focused. But when life becomes difficult, the truth surfaces. That's why growth demands discomfort. It forces authenticity. It shows you where you've been settling and where you still have room to rise. The very moments you wish would end are often the ones that define your next chapter. Think about every major breakthrough in your life. None of them came from moments of ease. They came from moments when you were uncertain, scared, or exhausted, yet you chose to keep going. You didn't grow when things went perfectly. You grew when they didn't. Every stretch beyond your limits built resilience. Every risk you took, even the ones that failed, expanded your perspective. That's the essence of growth. It's not about reaching a destination. It's about becoming capable of handling more along the journey. The discomfort that once scared you becomes the proof that you're evolving. It's human nature to want control, to want to know the outcome before you begin. But growth doesn't work that way. The path is revealed only through movement. You have to walk into the unknown before clarity appears. The fear of uncertainty keeps so many people stuck because they want assurance before action. Yet the only assurance you'll ever get comes after you've acted. Discomfort is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. It's the toll you pay for progress, and every step through it builds the confidence to keep going. Over time, you start to reframe discomfort as a sign of alignment rather than struggle. When something challenges you deeply, it's often because it matters to you. The discomfort of chasing a meaningful goal is far more fulfilling than the comfort of staying stagnant. Growth is not about constant struggle, but about choosing the right struggles, the ones that build you, not break you. You begin to see that the most rewarding paths are rarely the easiest. They're the ones that test you, stretch you, and prepare you for the life you're meant to lead. The paradox of growth is that the very thing you fear most, discomfort, is the thing that frees you. It sharpens your focus, strengthens your resolve, and deepens your understanding of yourself. The more you face it, the more you realize it was never there to harm you. It was there to reveal you. Every uncomfortable step forward reshapes your capacity, refines your purpose, and reinforces your belief that you can endure far more than you ever imagined. Reprogramming your mind rewires your future because every thought you consistently repeat becomes a blueprint for what you eventually experience. The human brain is not fixed. It's elastic, adaptive, and constantly reshaping itself based on what it's exposed to. That means every belief you hold, whether empowering or limiting, sends a signal to your subconscious about what kind of life you're building. When you feed it fear, it prepares for survival. When you feed it purpose, it prepares for creation. The moment you begin replacing doubt with belief, hesitation with action, and fear with courage, you change not just your mindset, but the trajectory of your entire life. Your future is being designed in the present moment by the quality of your thoughts. Most people don't realize that their internal dialogue is the architect of their reality. They repeat stories about what they can't do, what they failed at, or what they'll never achieve, and their minds obey those commands. The brain's job is not to determine truth. It's to follow instructions. If you tell it you're limited, it finds evidence to prove that's true. If you tell it you're capable, it starts searching for opportunities that confirm it. This is why the process of reprogramming is not about forcing positivity. It's about installing new, constructive instructions that align with the kind of future you want to create. The mind doesn't change just because you wish it to. It changes when you give it consistent, focused input that challenges the old patterns. Every time you choose a belief of strength over a belief of weakness, you're literally rewiring the connections in your brain. Neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reconfigure itself based on repeated thoughts and experiences. It's the scientific proof that your inner transformation is not abstract or imaginary. It's physical, measurable, and real. Your thoughts carve pathways in your neural network, And those pathways determine how easily your mind will respond to life's challenges in the future. When you begin reprogramming your thoughts, the world doesn't change immediately, but your perception does, and perception is the foundation of action. The same event that once felt like rejection starts to look like redirection. The same fear that once paralyzed you becomes a signal to prepare and grow. You start responding instead of reacting. You start noticing possibilities where you once saw problems. This shift in perspective is subtle but powerful. It changes how you interpret reality, and as your interpretation changes, your actions follow. Over time, those new actions build a new life. Belief is not magic, it's momentum. When you truly believe something is possible, you behave differently. You move with more intention, more confidence, and more focus. Those behaviors produce better results, which reinforce the original belief. It becomes a loop of progress instead of a loop of doubt. The more you trust yourself, the more your environment begins to mirror that trust. People respond differently to you, opportunities open, and situations that once seemed impossible begin to unfold naturally. The outside world always catches up to the inner one. It just takes time and consistency. What most people misunderstand about reprogramming is that it's not about pretending everything is fine. It's about consciously choosing what narrative to build your life upon. You can acknowledge pain without being consumed by it. You can face challenges without identifying with them. You can experience fear without letting it drive your decisions. The power lies in your ability to notice the thought, challenge it, and replace it with one that moves you closer to growth. Over time, this process builds mental discipline, the ability to lead your thoughts instead of being led by them. As your thoughts evolve, so do your standards. You stop tolerating environments, habits, and relationships that reinforce the old programming. You start seeking alignment instead of approval. You begin to prioritize peace over validation, progress over perfection, and purpose over comfort. This shift in values changes what you attract into your life. The opportunities that once seemed out of reach begin to appear, not because the world suddenly improved, but because your perception finally allowed you to see them. You can only receive what your mind is ready to recognize. Reprogramming also changes your relationship with failure. You stop seeing it as proof that you're not capable and start seeing it as evidence that you're learning. Failure becomes feedback, a neutral piece of data that helps refine your next move. When you stop taking failure personally, you remove the emotional weight that keeps you stuck. You realize that setbacks are not signs of defeat, but signs of progress. Each one gives you new information, sharper intuition, and stronger resilience. The reprogrammed mind doesn't fear mistakes because it understands they are part of mastery. There's a profound sense of freedom that comes when you start to think differently about what's possible. You stop living in reaction to your past and start living in anticipation of your future. You no longer measure your worth by old outcomes, but by current effort. The reprogrammed mind is not controlled by circumstance. It's guided by vision. It understands that life will still bring difficulty, but it also knows that the response determines the outcome. With every new thought grounded in possibility, your future becomes a reflection of the strength you cultivate in the present. Over time, this process compounds. A single thought becomes a decision becomes a habit, and a habit becomes identity. What you once had to force eventually becomes effortless. The beliefs that once felt foreign become your natural state of thinking. You stop trying to become confident and start being confident. You stop trying to believe in yourself and start acting from belief. That's how reprogramming your mind rewires your future. It doesn't just change how you think for a moment, it changes who you are becoming for a lifetime.